Hello, my honey boo boos. Universal Reviews is to be categorized as the podcast. So today I wanted to have a quick chat about my retire at 45 plans. Hey-oh! This is something new that I've worked out with my financial planner, and I am feeling so excited by the idea. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a deep dive into how I'm going to make that happen. So first and foremost, let's be straight up here. I am ridiculously and wildly privileged. I have benefited from living in a white supremacist culture, and I have benefited from living in a developed country and coming from a family that is relatively stable and believed in the power of education. So I wanted to put that out there. I realize I come from a very privileged standpoint in terms of these things. So let's talk about money. I've never been somebody who, in the beginning days of my life, I did not think I was good with money. I do come from a lower middle class family. A farming family, which is very feast and famine, and there was a lot of money stresses when I was growing up, and the threat of bankruptcy was very, very real, and I was also really aware of situations that a lot of other children probably aren't aware of. I remember I used to pray, even though I'm not religious. I don't come from a religious family. I used to pray anyway, and I would say, please God, please don't let anyone in my family die. Please don't let my parents get divorced. Please don't let the cattle rustlers steal any more cattle. And please don't let my parents go bankrupt. So those were the really massive fears for me, and it was sort of I don't think I was overly anxious. I was just picking up on the real energy that was around my family. My brother did die in a farming accident when I was 14. The cattle rustlers did continue to steal cattle, hundreds and hundreds of cattle. Cattle rustlers, by the way, is a word for people who steal cattle. So for people who are farmers, it's a really big, real and scary thing. And I know that the people who were stealing cattle continued to do it long after we left one of the properties that we're on, and they caused a lot of harm to a lot of farming families. My parents did end up separating, and they were on the verge of bankruptcy a lot of times. So that's kind of the money background I come from as a child, and my parents always told me don't be a farmer. Don't go into small business because you will not make any money. Do not have a creative career because you will starve. And also, very contradictorily, they'd said don't bother earning more money than $75,000 a year because then you'll be taxed at a higher rate. Hot tip, guys, absolutely get taxed at the higher rate. It's fucking great. Highly recommend it. You still end up with more money. It's amazing. Anyway, so that was kind of the money environments that I grew up in. And I definitely wasn't a kid who was really good at business or marketing or money or anything like that. I was way too dreamy. I was off in art land and making up stories land and just a real fairy of a human. And that continued right into my 20s. I didn't like looking at money. I didn't like planning for it. I had maxed out credit cards. I used to joke that it was un-Australian if you didn't have maxed out credit cards. Fucking terrible joke. But anyway, I used to make that joke. We didn't really have savings or anything like that. We just scraped together enough money to make a 5% deposit on the house that we were living in and bought it off the owners. So it in terms of knowing how to make money and keep money, like that was definitely not something that I was born with. And instead it was something I actually had to choose to make a difference in my life. So the very fucking idea that I am talking about retiring at 45 is a huge departure, a massive departure from my childhood and what I was taught about money. And it's absolutely a massive departure to the way that I behave with money in my early 20s as well. And in my early 20s, I was probably kind of mid 20s by the time I decided like, oh, I need to just sort of like start getting with my, the shit and start looking at money instead of ignoring it and pretending it was shallow to even consider money. It was shallow to be financially responsible. I had all these judgments about it, and I committed to giving myself a business and marketing education. I didn't go back to university or anything like that. I've never finished a university degree. And instead I just really wanted to learn how to master this money thing and how to learn have a money consciousness, so that I could change my destiny. And I really wanted to change my destiny at the age of 25 because I knew I wanted to have children. I knew I didn't want to go back to work. I wanted to be able to stay at home with them. So that's been the big motivator for life transformation for me and for becoming good with money and business and stuff like that, is because I was like, I don't want to continue living this life where I have to work full time away from my home. And I still feel like I need to do something creatively, and I want a really beautiful home life for my children. So that's how I began on this journey of business and marketing and learning about money. So the fact that it's only 12 years later and I'm looking in a retirement plan, and a retirement plan that can be achieved in the next 7 years really easily. I could probably achieve it honestly in the next 2 or 3 if I really pushed. Probably won't though, because I still have small children and they're still my priority. But the very idea of being able to retire at 45 is fucking thrilling and very exciting to me. So here's my plan, right? I'll dive into the details of it. Also, if you want to do an even deeper dive into money, manifesting in multiple streams of income, make sure you go and do that course of mine, leoniedawson.com/money. I do a deep dive into exactly what I had to change in my habits, the systems, the tools I use to manage money, the exercises, the challenges, all that stuff. And I think you'll find it wildly and hugely useful, because I've had thousands of people do that course now, and all of them have immediately saved and made so much money from doing it, which is fucking awesome. And most of all, it's helped them really step up and be responsible for their money, which is exactly what women and gender non-conforming peoples need to be doing, smash the patriarchy by taking all their money and redistributing wealth. Wow, sexy, woo! Okay, so for me, looking at the retirement plan is basically continuing to operate my business at a level where I'm generating a high level of profit. I did at a certain point have a really large team of 25 people, and my revenue increased, but my profit levels didn't, because it comes with a huge amount of extra expense when you have, an extra $800,000 in staffing expenses, and then all of the odds and sods that go with that. Because hot tip, people cost a lot of money. So I aim now just to keep a really streamlined business with one very part-time assistant who works virtually from her own home, and me basically, and my husband who's co-director of the company. And I want to keep it at those levels. So high profit, which means that I want things that don't really cost much money to produce, aka e-courses, information products, books, all those kinds of things, and don't have much expenses attached. So I'll continue on that path, and then, oh, someone's building a new fence. Good work, kids. Somebody's helping their dad. That's really cute. I'm just driving around the streets because I'm just about, like, I've already arrived home, but I don't want to stop talking to you, so I'm just going for a slight drive around our little acreage estate, and you can see all the little birds and the dogs and the gum trees and everything. Apparently there's a koala that lives on our street. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm very excited. We live on quite a long road. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, money. So with those extra expenses, I am also going to continue to save a lot of that money, and we will put it into an investment. And so what the investment that we've chosen for ourselves, and I'm not giving this to you advice as like this is what you should be doing, I'm just saying this is what we ended up deciding to do, is to look at managed funds, which is basically like shares, except it's managed by kind of financial managers, and it's over a much wider range of shares, so it gives a little bit more stability to your shares. And we specifically choose to go into ethical managed funds. There's a few, if you search for ethical superannuation or ethical managed funds, those kinds of options, there's heaps here in Australia, there's heaps around the world as well. And what that means is they don't buy shares in mining, in guns, in gambling, anything that really hyper contributes to climate change. They're instead investing in stuff that is much more sustainable and ethical, of course. So that for us is a much better fit, because we could have gone like, we could have managed shares ourselves, but I don't love doing that. And because I don't have the time and the information and the interest in managing those myself, so it works out better to have managed funds instead. For people who are really passionate about that, that's absolutely a good thing to do. I didn't want to go into real estate because that would mean dealing with people. And we do have one investment property at the moment that's rented out long term to people. It's not an Airbnb property, and it was originally our house before we moved out to the property we're on now. So we'll probably keep that for a little while longer, but we don't love investment properties. We've had 2 now, and we just find it a bit stressful, especially when tenants break shared. It feels more of a personal, whereas like when you've got shares and stuff, it feels much more detached, which is nice. So I'm going for the stuff that is stress-free. So that's what we ended up doing with that, is like, right, okay, we're going to invest into managed funds and ... So that's basically our plan now, is just to continue to make money and pop it into managed funds, and then work it up to a level where we would be able to live off it for 20 years, from the time like 45 to the age of 65, when our superannuation funds will be released. And so we'll be working on kind of a joint strategy of making sure we've got maxed out superannuation, which is your retirement fund, and then also having enough to live off in the 20 years up until that release point. So it's really fun and exciting for me to even have some kind of goal point in mind. And I find it really motivating personally to have it that way. Now, in terms of like, will I actually retire at 45? No, because I don't really work anyway. I feel like I've been kind of on semi-retirement for years now, and this feels like the greatest fun and the greatest joy. And so from then I'd just be taking on complete passion projects, and it would also kind of be interesting to consider maybe doing some being on the boards of non-profits. Or I'm not even sure what the next part of life would look like, but I definitely want to continue creating and sharing in whatever ways. And as well, then we still have our strategy of how much we wish to donate to different organisations. Our main focus is on Australian Wildlife Conservancy at the moment. They're the largest private landowner in Australia, and they return ecosystems and animals, like preserve it for wilderness. And I feel like that is a really hugely important part for conservation and also for the climate crisis. And I love that they've got built into the model that they have Indigenous rangers as well, and who are kind of continuing their culture of managing the land as well, because that's also a really important part of not only racial justice work, of course, and social justice, but the climate crisis as well. It's just fascinating how it's all intertwined. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, and what I'm feeling excited about. And who knows where this beautiful journey is going to take me. For me, I feel like all of life has really been about creating as much freedom for myself to be all of myself as possible, and to tend to myself beautifully, and then be able to tend to the rest of the world beautifully from that overflow. I love that I changed all of my superannuation and retirement funds and investments out of normal companies at the beginning of this year. It's a really hugely important part of the climate crisis part, and to know that I'm making money from sustainable and ethical solutions feels really important to me. And it also means that the rest of the world is feeling the effects of more and more people who are making these decisions to go into ethical superannuation and ethical shares. And it means that mining companies are finding it much harder to get investment in order to be able to do those kinds of activities. So much so that BlackRock Investments, which is the largest managed fund, managed fund in the world, which managed trillions of dollars in money, have actually pulled out of mining as of January this year. Oh, go for it, my love. Hi, sweetheart. Yes, I will come inside in a second. They've actually pulled out of investing in mining, saying that they no longer believe it's a financially sustainable future. And I think that's the way that things will continue to roll. It's smarter to have your money, and of course it's the right thing to do to have your money in smart solutions. Now, I do want to say as well, I found the process to change over into ethical super ridiculously easy. I thought that it was going to take much longer than it would, and I thought about doing it for years, and literally it took me about 3 minutes online, and I did not need any documentation. I can't even remember if I had to sign a form. It was so fucking ridiculously easy. So it's totally easy to do that. The only thing one, you need to talk to a financial advisor to make sure that it's the right choice for you. And two, you do need to make sure that any life insurances or whatever that you have set up through your current super or retirement fund or insurances or whatever, investments, make sure that you don't fuck yourself when you move over to ethical stuff, because you may have accrued a certain amount if you've been in a fund or a retirement fund for a long time. Anyway, those are some things to think about. I fucking love talking about money. Now, if you want to do a deeper dive, again, make sure you go to my Money Manifesting and Multiple Streams of Income course. There's my 4-week e-course where you go completely behind the scenes of how I built a multi-million-dollar net worth, the very practical and simple changes I had to make from being pretty shit with money to being pretty bloody great with money, and how you can do totally the same thing. So that's leoniedawson.com/money. Anyway, I hope this has been so useful. If you've got anyone who's struggling with money or need some inspiration about how they can change their lives and the world with money, make sure you share this podcast with them. And I want to send you all so much love and blessings and goodness, and may all of your biggest dreams and miracles come true.